So when we look back at the 60s and 70s, I mean, there's just your father, Alan Watts, that basically defined that culture from his writings. Is there anybody else that would be notable?
Well,
They perhaps are similar, but not exactly what he was doing.
Right.
There was Howard Vernon.
there's, Ram Dass and
Ram Dass, yes.
Timothy Leary, they were really good friends of my dad's. And so and Allen Ginsberg and Gary Snyder and, all those people were people that he hung out with and played with and
Right.
talked with.
And the playing was that there was the psychedelic experimentation.
There was that.
Opening up the consciousness.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
did he ever talk to you about this at any point in time?
Oh,
On
yeah.
a one-to-one?
Oh yeah, we shared experiences. We shared LSD experiences together, and what was really beautiful for me was that he was very responsible about those types of experiences, and I remember a really beautiful time when we were on an LSD trip together, and he came up to me. This is way back in my 20s, and I'm now in my 70s. So he came up to me and he said, "Where are you?" And I began to tell him where I was, and I was underwater at that moment. And I felt him actually be there with me. And it was very real and very alive and it's the kind of person he was, And so I have an appreciation for that. It was an interesting kind of blossoming time in my life.
Now, you see, let me speak specifically for a moment. I said the subject of this is LSD. LSD is one such chemical that does produce this curious effect of making you aware of the polarity of things. It does lots of other things. It does lots of rather unessential and trivial things. And these, of course, in all the publicity in the various national magazines about LSD, get thoroughly emphasized. In other words, when somebody says something's real psychedelic, they mean bizarre. And when the national magazines try to illustrate the effect of these chemicals with various photographs, they come on with blurred photographs of all sorts of things higgledy-piggledy messed together, naked girls seen through prisms. Well, that's absolutely nothing to do with it. If you wanted some sort of appropriate illustration for a Life magazine article on the effects of LSD, you would have one very simple solution. You would publish the most gorgeous color reproductions of Persian miniatures and of Moorish arabesques and of the illuminations of Celtic manuscripts. That would give you the story, so far as changes in human sensation are concerned. But there would be one thing very difficult to put across in pictures, because the people who looked at them, if they didn't get the point of view, wouldn't see it. And that is what I will call the sensation, as well as the intellectual understanding, of polarity. That is to say, that the inside and the outside, the subjective and the objective, the self and the other, go together. In other words, there is a harmony, an unbreakable harmony. When I'm using the word harmony, I don't necessarily mean something sweet. I mean absolute concordant relationship between what goes on inside your skin and what goes on outside your skin. It is.
Yeah.
And what was his consciousness about? How did you experience it? Of the taking of the LSD? Did it hinder you? Did it help you? Was it beneficial?
For me, it was beautiful. It was a lovely place to be. in that sort of altered state of consciousness. And you know, like one of the things that I could feel was that feeling of not knowing the difference between the outside and my own skin, you know, like that kind of, all of that kind of disappeared, and all sensations were heightened. So it was beautiful, but it wasn't something that I was in any way attached to. I did a few journeys, and then I didn't anymore. And it's never been something that's been a big part of my life. So, yeah.
The use of things that would lift us out of the egocentric situation could therefore be considered medical, as healing for a social disorder. But again, I would say that they, used in that way, should be used as medicine in the sense that they don't become diet. Because in my experience, and of course in this matter everybody speaks for themselves, but say I consider just myself alone, I wouldn't feel very put out if, say, LSD were to vanish from the earth tomorrow. Because I have discovered that this is not the sort of thing you sort of take every so often, like you go to church, or if you do, but it's something that you can take several times in a gradually diminishing quantity, and then you've had it. Beyond that, it's up to you to integrate your vision with everyday life and with all the various kinds of knowledge. That's enough is enough. But there are other people who seem to think that the great thing to do is to start out with a little and then keep on going, making it bigger and bigger and bigger, as if they were looking for something that should lie at the end of the line. And then it becomes a diet. Now, that is indeed getting hooked on medicine. And doctors don't like to hook you on medicine, and very rightly, because the ideal of a good doctor is to get rid of you as a patient. He doesn't want chronic patients, poor people always hanging on to him, always rushing for help. He wants to set you back on your own feet. And that is an excellent principle. This is where the doctor really has something to say to the priest, because priests tend, by and large, to want to hook you. In other words, to keep you coming to church, so that you will pay your dues and the church will prosper. So the more people they can get hooked on religion, the merrier. Now, priests in this way ought to learn from the doctors and try and get rid of people by telling them their gospel or whatever it is they have to say and say, now you've had it, go away. Because you see, if you do that, you will create a vacuum, and it will always be filled. Just as when the faster a doctor can get people out of his office, they go around and tell everybody, this man cured me, I didn't have to go back to him. So more people will be coming in. There are always plenty and plenty of people, never come to an end. So in a way, the religious man ought to handle a huge turnover of people, coming through and going away, coming through and going away. Then he's really working. But he should not get them hooked on the medicine. Indeed, there is a famous Latin phrase, crux medicina mundi, the cross, the medicine of the world. But people get hung up, you see, on the cross. And Jesus didn't, you'll remember. According to the Christian mythology, Jesus came alive again afterwards. He didn't get hung up, only for a while. And so in the same way, if Christians really believed in the inner meaning of their doctrine, they wouldn't get hung up on the cross either, except temporarily. I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live. So also, when it comes to the use of any technique whatsoever, whether it's yoga or LSD or what have you, for spiritual awakening, there applies to it the Buddha's symbol of the raft. The Buddha likened his method, his dharma, or doctrine or method, to a raft. It's also called a yana, or vehicle, hence the Mahayana, the big vehicle, the Hinayana, the little vehicle. And it takes you across the river, of which this shore is birth and death, and the other shore liberation, nirvana. Now you get on that raft and you go over, and when you get to the other shore, you leave the raft behind. Same way they say in Zen Buddhism. Their technique, the use of the koan or meditation problem, is like knocking at a door with a brick. When the door is opened, you don't carry the brick inside. You leave the brick behind. So with all these things, they are means, upaya, and they have as their objective deliverance from means. The Christian mystics speak of the highest state of contemplative prayer or union with God as a union without means. And I would extend the sense of the word means even to ecstasy. In other words, ecstasy is invariably in the great religious traditions not a final state. Ecstasy is an intermediate state. So, for example, in Zen, when the experience of satori or awakening comes about, there is an ecstasy. You feel marvelous. You feel as if you were walking on air. You feel absolutely unobstructed. You feel as happy as a lark. You feel, you know, this fantastic bang. It's marvelous. But that in itself is only incidental. A Zen saying says, that monk who has a satori goes to hell as straight as an arrow. In other words, to have it is to cling to it. And if you think that the ecstasy is the important thing, it isn't. The ecstasy is an intermediate stage to bring you back to the point where you can see that everyday life, that your ordinary mind, as they say in Zen, is the Buddha mind. That everyday life as it is the great thing. And there is no difference between that and the divine life.